Hello, dear listener. Welcome back. It's another episode of Havlicek Stole the Pod. I am your host, Alex Goldberg. With me, as always, is Dr. Justin Quinn and Daniel Donabedian. We're going to start off with the news because there's a lot to get into. Things are getting spicy in the NBA and for the Boston Celtics these days. And then we are going to jump into the second half of our pod after that, where we have a terrific guest. We're going to get into that. It's Henry Abbott from TrueHoop, and we have all of that coming to you more later. But we're going to start off with the news. Let's just jump right into the Celtics and what they've been up to since last we spoke. I missed the last episode, but in that time between the last episode and now, the Celtics have played 3 games. They're playing another game tonight against the lowly Washington Wizards. Jaylen Brown will be missing that game due to what I'm sure are very real and serious injuries that he needs to take a rest from, or sickness or something like that.
Non-COVID injuries, the official status. But
right, exactly. Yeah, definitely. Something like that. Definitely not resting ahead of the national TV game against the Lakers the day after. Get well soon, Jaylen. Jaylen has looked fairly well these days, but clearly, the Wizards, there's something going on there. Anyway, since the last time this pod collected and met, the Celtics played 3 games. The first, a fourth quarter collapse against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Anthony Edwards was completely unstoppable late, hitting pretty much everything he put up, no matter how ridiculous the shot. There was one in particular where Derek White stripped the ball from Anthony Edwards and it just kind of rolled back to him in a late clock situation and he just chucked it up and it went in. And it was that kind of night for the Boston Celtics. It was a close game up until the fourth quarter, but there was a mix of horrible shooting from guards Derek White and Peyton Pritchard, some late turnovers and poor execution, and of course Anthony Edwards getting on a super heater to end that game. But that's not all bad news for the Celtics, because after that game, the next game, they played against the Cleveland Cavaliers and nearly let go of the rope, but they managed to hold on and gut out a close win. Peyton Pritchard had 40 points in that game and was all over the place, completely unstoppable from really everywhere on the floor. Jaylen Brown chipped in with a triple-double, and the Celtics' killer whale offense feasted on Darius Garland around Thanksgiving time. It was quite something to watch. They pretty much put him in action every possession late, and that led to some good things for Boston. Then after that, they had a gutsy signature win against the New York Knicks. Jaylen Brown started the game off slow, had, I believe it was 4 turnovers in the first quarter, and 2 fouls, just generally completely out of rhythm. And then in the second quarter, he became a completely different player en route to a 42-point night for JB, along with some crucial late game plays from Jordan Walsh and Derek White, some pretty stellar defense from Hugo Gonzalez on Karl Anthony Towns, and Jalen Brunson really never finding his rhythm against the Celtics. So those are the 3 games. And we're going to go around the horn and just talk about what we saw. What are the things that jumped out? We got highlights. We got lowlights from each and every one of these. JQ, I'll start with you. What do you got?
I mean, we are starting to see that the players that have joined the Celtics this season in particular, and Jordan Walsh, who doesn't quite fit that category, but he basically joined the Celtics this year, even though he's been on contract for several. He got his first real minutes this season, and recently he's been indispensable, Jordan Walsh. The rest of the depth seems to be able to step up whenever anybody else is not really having a great night, which has been fantastic. I think we need to see more Hugo Gonzalez. I'm very curious to see more Amari Williams when the situation is right. I thought we were going to have a little extra showing the other night, and turns out he was just there to foul Mitchell. But all said and done, I think what we have learned is that the Celtics team is actually pretty good, and it's the depth players, the bench really, who's driving it. The guys who have stepped into starting roles or bigger roles on the starting roster, this season are all doing well or well enough, but it's really, for me, the bench that has been the story of the last few games.
Daniel, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to say in these last three, and Justin highlighted the bench. I'll highlight Jaylen Brown. I mean, he's just been incredible these past 3 games. I think Timberwolves, he just got off to such a hot start. I think the Cavs was the game he had the triple-double in, his 4th one ever. And then, I mean, the Knicks game, like, that speaks for itself. Like, season high, 42 points. He's just carrying the team, really, night after night. And the bench has been big, no doubt about it. Like, Jordan Walsh had a career high against the Cavs. Those offensive rebounds in the 4th quarter were so huge against the Knicks. But at the end of the day, Jaylen Brown has just done a great job leading this team. And he's made good on the promise of what he could do when he's the primary scoring option. He's proven himself right so far. And honestly, he's playing close to like a top 10 player in the NBA right now. He wasn't on the MVP ladder last week when I checked, but this week he certainly should be.
Yeah, agreed. I think some people reacted to me pretty crazily when I suggested that he would have a real case at like maybe even cracking the top 5 if you see one of Giannis or I forget who else, Wemby, not being qualified by the end of the season. If the Celtics were a home court team in terms of the standings, and as ludicrous as that might have sounded even just several games ago, they're currently just 1.5 games out of a home court advantage.
There's another guy I want to give a shout out to in this period who I think has had a little bit more of an understated impact. Obviously, Gonzalez and Walsh have both been outstanding. Pritchard, White, Brown, the usual suspects. Queta has been really strong when he's played. He missed that Cleveland game, but he's been really strong otherwise. But the guy that has kind of jumped out to me lately is a guy who established a role for this team earlier this season. Josh Minott, guys, is shooting nearly 43% from 3 this year, which is a massive jump from his previous very small sample size percentage. He's emerged as a really reliable swing piece for this team. And one thing that I've noticed a lot of Minott, what he's been doing lately, is he's been playing small ball center for the Celtics in lineups that have actually been pretty effective, particularly if you have the kind of wing hydra of Walsh, Brown, White, Gonzalez, all these kind of long, rangy defenders. The rebounding has, been a little tricky, but it hasn't been as bad as I thought it was going to be with Minott playing that small ball 5 position. And the perimeter defense has been outstanding in those moments. They're shooting pretty well as well. That's something I'm keeping my eye on, which brings me to the other person that I think really deserves a shout out for where the Celtics are at, playing pretty well as we round into the second quarter of the season. Guys, Joe Mazzulla has been coaching his ass off. There's just no other way to say it. He's had an outstanding season with a really challenging roster to work with. A lot of different, kind of key pieces leaving in the offseason and new pieces having to be integrated, lineup shuffling around on a night-to-night basis. Outside of Brown, Pritchard, and White and Queta, they basically never know what they're going to get from any one of these guys, even if they are playing well lately. But Joe Mazzulla has just been hitting every correct button, it seems like, up through the beginning of the season, whether it's going small and trusting Gonzalez and Minott to cover up on the defensive end, trusting Queta to, blossom into what I now think we can say is a fairly capable starting center, or figuring out how to kind of generate offense while key players like Derek White and Peyton Pritchard have been kind of going through shooting volatility, to say the least. It's been really impressive to watch Mazzulla kind of navigate this season. It hasn't all been sunshine and roses. There have been definitely some hiccups. This is still a team that is very much a work in progress. And for all the hustle and grit that they've shown, they still have a talent deficit. That's been punctuated by the fact that this team still gives up pretty huge runs. It's been a recurring problem basically throughout the Joe Mazzulla era, and really before even, that the Celtics have this tendency to give up massive runs, 20 point runs, things like that over the course of games. They also, to their credit, can go on those runs, but they give them up a lot. The defense has been better, but inconsistent. There have definitely been times where, particularly whenever they're going up against a really good post player, like Karl Anthony Towns, for example, that poses real problems for this team still. Their late game offense is a little bit clunky. They are still very much at the mercy of shooting variance in a lot of respects. The other thing that I wanted to point out is that I'm still not exactly sure what Anthony Simons' role is on this team.
No.
It seems like
theoretically microwave scorer, but it seems like it's every other game that he's capable of doing it, and then he just disappears the other game.
Yeah, no, it's weird because in the Knicks game, Anthony Simons made a couple of pretty good plays over the course of that game. But despite making those plays and having what I thought was a fairly positive impact, he really never established any sort of rhythm or flow. And I feel like in this 6-man role, that's been the hardest thing for him, is when he was starting in Portland and getting, pretty regular and reliable minutes, he was able to kind of get into, shooting and rhythm and flow a little bit more effectively. This year, it's been very much in fits and starts, and I'm still not sure that Joe Mazzulla completely trusts him. But despite all of this,
it's the defensive breakdowns. He's a good defender compared to what his reputation is, but he can't sustain it. And whenever that happens, he gets pulled, and that's pretty much the end of his night.
That, and I would also posit Anthony Simons does not pass the ball very much, and I think there are. There's a case to be made that there are other players on this team that don't pass very much. Peyton Pritchard and Jaylen Brown come to mind. They're not exactly either elite passers, but Jaylen Brown's been improving in that area. Peyton Pritchard has been improving in that area. And I think the reality is that you can sustain things with 2 heavy ball dominant guys. Once you put 3 ball dominant guys on the court, things start to get a little bit wonky. But overall, I mean, I think we have to take away that this has been a pretty positive stretch for Boston these past couple games. Is there anything to add with, the recent games, stuff that you know?
No.
Something like that? No. Okay. Fair enough. Some other small potatoes news that we should talk about. Danilo Gallinari retired. He was on the Celtics for 1 year and got hurt immediately. And by all accounts, was a nice guy and a pretty fun player back in his prime. Had a good 3-point shooter. Do we have anything to say about Danilo's time in Boston? Anyone?
It was nice to think about him, but never happened.
I remember the game on the Hawks when he torched them, and maybe it could have been cool to have that going for them, but it worked out regardless for the Celtics.
Yeah, I think that's right. Danilo Gallinari didn't seem like he loved how his term in Boston ended. But, with all due respect, sorry, Danilo, but bigger fish to fry in that situation. Just bad luck. Bill Chisholm, the Boston Celtics' new owner, recently appeared on the Derek White podcast, White Noise. And Jayson Tatum was recently on the Morris Twins podcast. The Celtics have been kind of making the media rounds lately. Jaylen Brown's also reliably doing his post-game Twitch streams, which are always entertaining. Daniel, you kind of had some stuff on Jayson Tatum's appearance on the Morris Twins podcast. You want to jump into that?
Yeah, it was just funny seeing him quickly tweet something out, like just a link, and I was like, what is this? And it was to the Morris podcast, which I don't think many people really know about. But hey, Tatum doesn't make too many appearances, especially since he's been injured. But there's some good stuff on that, so I do recommend people try it out or give it a listen, because he mentioned his health. They had some funny stories about like how Brad Stevens would want Marcus Morris to give the scouting report on his brother, and he just straight up wouldn't because he wants his brother to play well. He asked him, and he's like, no, like, you guys can figure it out. So I thought that was funny. And then Tatum talked about the whole finals MVP thing with Jaylen Brown, and he had a good response about him not being upset in the moment because he knows his time will come and he'll get one of his own. So I know Celtics fans will like to hear that. And just his last thing was about him trying to get back and how it's been 29 weeks, almost 30 weeks now. And it still seems optimistic that he could come back. But I recommend people check that out.
There's some practice footage that indicates that he's making some progress in that area. All right, this has all been window dressing. We need to talk about two particularly massive stories in the NBA nationally that are much more important than anything we just said. The first, just a quick acknowledgement. The Los Angeles Clippers are in a very weird place right now, having unceremoniously dumped Chris Paul in what was supposed to be his retirement tour season due to personality conflicts with a bunch of people. That sucks, but we're going to move on to the more important thing, which is that Giannis Antetokounmpo sure seems like a guy who's going to get traded potentially very, very soon, within the next 2 to 4 weeks. He's deleted a lot of his Bucks-related social media. Shams and Windy are both reporting that he's opening up conversations around his future, so to speak. And to put it all a bow on it, he also just got injured and is going to be out for 2 to 4 weeks with a calf strain. So we got to talk about this. This is one of the 3 best NBA players active right now in trade rumors before January, which is wild. Daniel, I'll start with you. What do we make of this? The trade rumors, the story itself, as well as, where he might be going.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of knew Giannis wasn't the happiest given how last season ended and the rumors that he was interested in the Knicks. Now I think he's going to be open to all suitors. And it was very interesting that Shams said this could be resolved in the coming weeks, not like, months from now or at the end of the season. He said weeks, so this could happen soon, like you kind of said, Alex. As to where he goes, I don't know, but Giannis has never struck me as a guy who wants to live in the glitz and glam of LA or the beaches of Miami. He just wants to win. And the Bucks right now aren't really doing that. So whoever can put up the best deal and has just a winning team or potential, I think could land him. But it's going to be interesting. Like you said, one of the best players in the NBA. It's going to shake up the East for sure.
JQ, what are your thoughts on the Big G potentially heading out of Milwaukee?
Well, I don't think he's going to end up on the Celtics. I think that's pretty obvious. I do think that it's going to be hard to predict where he is going to end up, simply because if it's not the Knicks, and there's a pretty good chance that even if he wants it to be the Knicks, it's not going to be the Knicks. They do have some duty to respect his wishes of a place to arrive. But I think even if it's the Knicks, we are probably going to see at least a 3-team trade, if not folded into an even larger trade when it does happen, only because of all the new restrictions that we're seeing on moving players, particularly in the middle of the season when there's smaller roster sizes. It just becomes a lot harder to do a straight-up 2-team trade, particularly if it's going to be something moving a player on the level of a Giannis. So I'm not trying to waste too much mental capacity with where he's going to end up, but I do think that the general sense that it is going to be sooner than the trade deadline and potentially much sooner is correct.
It's going to be an interesting watch. There's been some conflicting sources. Brian Windhorst seems pretty adamant that the Knicks should be considered the front runner. Shams Charania is suggesting that the search is going to be a little bit more open than that. The San Antonio Spurs, there's been a lot of buzz about them, particularly today, trying to accelerate the timeline around Victor Wembanyama. A couple other suitors to mention, of course, the Houston Rockets have been linked to Giannis for a while. Golden State Warriors, the Miami Heat, the usual suspects. I have some dear friends of mine who are Los Angeles Lakers fans that seem to think that they're going to be getting Giannis, and we'll leave that at that. But
I mean, if they were just take everything we have that is, not the guy we just traded for, maybe. But yeah,
maybe could see it. Austin Reeves is having a very good season. I think it's one of those things where once it becomes clear that Giannis Antetokounmpo is available for trade, you're suddenly going to see pretty much every front office in the league at least try to come up with some sort of package, just because due diligence, you have to when a player that good becomes available. I would guess that the short list is relatively short. There's only a few teams that can plausibly do it and still have a legitimate contention window. But it's going to be fascinating to watch. Just as a quick note, Luka Doncic was out for a couple of weeks with a calf strain before he got traded. We could see something similar happening here. Giannis will not be on the court for at least a couple of weeks. And when he does come back on the court, he might well be wearing a completely different uniform. So we'll put a pin in the news now with that. But we are going to talk a little bit more about some things related to Giannis, his injury, Jayson Tatum's injury, and other injuries right after this. And stick around. Welcome back, dear listener. We're here in the second part of the pod with Henry Abbott of TrueHoop, who has a new book coming out. It's called Ballistic, The New Science of Injury-Free Athletic Performance by Henry Abbott. Henry, first off, welcome to the pod. How are you doing today, sir?
Great. Thank you for having me. Are you guys all in Boston?
No.
Mexico City.
I'm close. I'm the closest. They're not.
And I'm in Brooklyn, New York.
Oh my God. Is this allowed? Is this
I know.
It's kind of cheating, right? Yeah.
Got a couple C's fans in exile, but you know, we're making it work.
Okay.
Still holding it down. And I have to say, there's a decent amount of Celtics fans in Brooklyn. Has to be thrown out there. The Nets aren't exactly
popular team.
Yeah.
The Nets are not exactly bringing in gangbusters these days. Well,
there's a picture of Pablo Escobar in a Celtics hat, by the way. I don't know if you've seen that, but if it's getting a Pablo,
that's true. That's a real picture.
Yeah.
Henry, welcome to the pod. You're going to talk about your book, Injuries, and how it all works. But before we jump right into that, we got to kick things off, as we do with all of our guests, with the steal. Henry, you get to steal the pod, take it over, take it in any direction that you want to go. What do you want to talk about here?
Chris Paul.
Let's do it.
Yeah, this is on my mind. You know, the Celtics mysteriously parted ways with Chris Paul in the middle of the night, and there's been some reporting about why. But I just want to add one more little layer of this that I think everyone's not thinking about, which is
Clippers.
Clippers.
Actually, could say the Celtics. We could say the Celtics because of the whole Buffalo Braves thing, but that's a whole other thing.
No, let's not. We're going to get confused enough today. Let's not do that. That was just me being like 51 years old, and I just say the wrong word sometimes. So the Clippers parted ways with Chris Paul, and the thing we have to remember is the team is under investigation, kind of for two things, right? One is Pablo Torre kicked off some excitement with Steve Ballmer and Kawhi Leonard. And so everybody on the team has to decide if they're going to participate with that investigation or not, right? That's real. Those investigators are talking to people. Number two is, I don't know how closely you guys have followed this Chauncey Billups, gambling scandal, but Tyronn Lue is a very serious poker player who says his closest friend is Chauncey Billups. He was at some of the critical games where the bad things happened, reportedly. And I imagine there are investigators circling the team around that topic too. And to me, that no one's going to talk about either of those things happening, but they're real if you're on that team. And so Chris Paul is a mouthy, kind of disagreeable old guy, which usually isn't very offensive. But I'm wondering if maybe in this context where it's kind of like the heist movie scene where we're wondering who the rat's going to be, maybe it's a little scarier to have that guy in the locker room.
This is among the best takes I've heard about this entire scenario. I'm really glad that you got to steal the pod here because I am all in on stuff like this. The subterfuge, the cloak and dagger, the idea that like Chris Paul could, inadvertently rat out like Tyronn Lue for, some nefarious gambling related issues or Kawhi Leonard's
or advertently
with aspiration. I think we also have to examine the Chris Paul Players Union connection here on that same train. Chris Paul was VP of the Players Union, president of the Players Union for a very long time during his NBA career. There could be some interesting stuff going on like that. I like this. We might want to, Henry, you might want to consider, hitting up Pablo Torre sometime in the next couple of weeks just to poke a little more at this one. I'm sure that Steve Ballmer would love that.
He would love that. Yeah, we want to make Steve happy. That's the main thing we're driving at here. Yeah.
This is good. I like it.
I mean, if Chris Paul didn't have an incentive to snitch on the Clippers already, now he certainly does.
He'll snitch on you if your jersey's untucked. He'll snitch.
Yeah, they ruined his retirement tour. I mean, he had to post at like 3 a.m. about him going home and getting cut. It. What do you think?
Does he really want a retirement tour on a sinking ship? I don't know.
It's not good. I mean, it's not good. They won. What are they like 5-16 or something right now? It's just terrible.
Yeah.
And he's probably going to end up somewhere, right? If you're not going to play for a crappy team, you can not play for a great team, right? That's another option for you in most cases. So I don't know.
Seemed an awful lot like there's only one team that Chris Paul would potentially be signing with, given his proclivity for wanting to stay in Los Angeles, closer to his family. There's a world in which the right level of spitefulness comes together, and suddenly Chris Paul is teaching Luka Doncic the dark arts of foul baiting and yelling at the refs. Like, I could see that in the near future.
I'll tell you one other little thing, though. Yes, but I'll tell you one thing. Like, for a while in the NBA, the biggest, scariest thing to the league was the banana boat guys, right? So this was LeBron, Dwayne Wade, Chris Paul, and Carmelo Anthony, who were pictured on vacation on this banana boat together. And the idea was that they could move the chess pieces like no one ever had before, blah, blah, blah. But some NBA front office guy pointed out to me, did you notice that none of them ever used their ability to move Chris Paul to their team? Like, he is difficult, right? He is kind of a pain in the ass, and he used to be like the best point guard in the league, so it was worth it. But the one thing that I was thinking about the Lakers too, but I'm like, LeBron's had a lot of opportunities to get him and didn't get him. I wonder if there's a reason for that. That's all speculation, but I just thought it was interesting.
All I can say on that is the idea of Luka Doncic taking Chris Paul classes terrifies me as a Celtics fan. Luka Doncic becoming even more irritating. I don't know if I could handle it. This is a fabulous steal. Really like what we're hearing here. As far as the Clippers season is concerned, man, we'll see. But all I'm saying is I think there's a couple of guys on that team that could be very productive players on, certain other Eastern Conference teams that might be available sooner rather than later. Hello, Ivica Zubac. I don't know what you're planning on doing with the rest of your season, but...
Or I saw on Hoops Hype, there was a thing like, James Harden wants out. I'm like, oh my gosh, we've been seeing this for 20 years.
Does he ever want in?
I know.
We were in the group chat this year. We were talking about some potential James Harden destinations that we have in mind. There's some pretty fun ones out there. I got to say it. The idea of James Harden in Atlanta is tantalizing to me.
Oh, that's interesting.
That would be pure chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll jump into the book now that we've had some fun conspiracy theories to kick things off. So, Henry, talk to us about the book. The title again is Ballistic: The New Science of Injury-Free Athletic Performance. It's available it's printed from W.W. Norton and Company. And the tagline is, "Injuries are not destiny. This revolutionary new account of the science of injury prevention shows how ballistic movement can help you get strong, stay healthy, and be elite." So give us the elevator pitch. Tell us how it came to be a project. And then also, what do we mean when we're talking about ballistic movement? What is that?
Mm-hmm. I didn't even know, honestly, when I pitched this book, I didn't know what that word meant. It means airborne, basically. So ballistic missiles are airborne missiles. So ballistic basketball is probably the most ballistic sport in that you're moving explosively off the ground, jumping. There's some argument for volleyball. They jump a lot in volleyball. But basically that means you're going to hit the ground a lot. And we can get more into this. But being airborne and then landing is the cause of non-contact injuries. It's the vast majority of them are caused by this because the forces are massive. And it hasn't been well studied until recently. And so the story of the book is this guy, Marcus Elliott, tore his ACL in football practice on his 17th birthday and got depressed, went into his bedroom, stayed in there for months, missed most of his senior year of high school. And then he kind of came out with like, okay, I'm not going to play football in college. I'm not going to be on the path I thought I was going to be on. But instead, I'm going to dedicate my life to making sure other people don't go through what I just went through. He's like, there's got to be a way to prevent these kinds of injuries. And he's still doing that, whatever it is, he's 60-ish now. And he went to Harvard Medical School. He had a million different tools. He studied microbe science. I forget what he studied his undergrad at UC Santa Barbara, but all of medical school. And eventually, years into his professional career, they get to force plates in the floor, which starts showing crazy cool stuff. So like if you throw a baseball 100 miles an hour, you're a huge person like Randy Johnson. or a tiny person with an incredibly efficient system to push on the force plate and transfer the force of pushing through your body by magic into the ball. So like, what's going on with that? So then they bought these cameras in the ceiling, infrared cameras, and the whole motion capture system. And then they started seeing it just unlocked a whole world of examining human movement with a view to athletic performance and injury prevention, which seems to be vastly more potent territory than MRIs and X-rays and doctors' eyes watching, the kind of stuff we've been using, and trainers. It's just a better input for how to see these things, bad things before they happen or good things before they happen, so that you can kind of get the most out of athletes.
So that's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. Yeah. The ability to detect like an ACL tear or a pulled hamstring. Like, how does that work exactly?
Oh, that's like a layup for me. Yeah, I love this question. Okay, so in the particular question of ACL tear, in NBA players, I did a study of almost 400 players over 2 years, and they're looking at how everybody moves. It takes about 1 million data points per assessment. The assessment takes like almost an hour. I've done it twice myself, and they just have you do a whole series of movements with those cameras in the ceiling and the force plates in the floor, and they just get like a really, really granular, detailed picture of, when you land. How much does your ankle flex? How much does your knee flex? How much does your hip flex? In what direction? Is it all in a nice line or is it wobbly? Do you press off your right foot and your left foot equally? Like, and on and on and on, all these questions. And so they end up with all this data. And then in the case of this ACL study, they watched everybody over 2 years, and basically who ends up with an ACL tear, or actually there were other catastrophic knee injuries too. I think a meniscus tear, and there's maybe one other one. And so the people who do end up with a catastrophic knee injury, then we look back and say, how do they move, right? And now in this study, there's a tremendous amount of kind of data validation and just like, is it correlation, causation? Do they have a real signal here? And the answer is yes. Like, they can actually model 60% of NBA knee injuries in advance. So they have this like real insight, which like no one with their MRI data, or they're looking at ligament thickness or whatever, no one can come close to this. So but there are two giant causes of ACL tears. The most, like, one of them, this first one I'll tell you, is present in 100% of cases of NBA ACL tear, which is you land with a sloppy foot. Basically, you land on the outside of your foot and then roll to the inside such that your shin bone moves 25 degrees or more. They call it translation. It's pretty common. And if you land like that, it's just a 5-alarm fire of injury risk. And so it's something you can train. Like, there are players at P3 every summer learning not to land like that, so that they bring down their injury risk. The other big injury risk is, you guys know about valgus collapse? Have you heard about this? Or Q angle? Okay, so it's in the world of physical therapy. This is seen as like the number one risk for ACL tear, which is as you like squat or land, your knees go in towards each other. If you do that, if you go to like your local gym and get a training session and like do a squat and put your knees like that, they will stop you. It's like the most famous no in athletic movement. But there's a bummer, which is it doesn't really in studies show up. It's not really true that everyone who tears their ACL moves like that. It's like this frustrating thing. And there are lots of people who move like that who don't. Lots of people who tear ACLs who move fine like that. So what they've discerned is that there's another wrinkle to this, which we haven't seen before, which is among people who squat in this weird way with their knees going to each other, some of them, it's just their knees going, and some of them, it's their femur, the upper leg bone, rotating. It twists because it's a kind of loosey-goosey at the hip end, which lets it turn. If it twists like that, it's like taking the drumstick off the turkey, and it rips your ACL at the knee.
Yeah. Ugh.
That's also trainable. You can do a bunch of stuff to make your hip muscle, like whole hip muscles, there are many of them, like hold your femur better. And so these are the kinds of things. There are more down the list, but like those are the two big ones of you can make your lower leg more stable and you can make your hip more stable and you can dramatically reduce the likelihood of ACL tear.
So it sounds like NBA teams, or at least individual players, are using this approach, this technology. I don't know what you exactly call it, this agglomeration of techniques and knowledge to improve their chances of not getting this kind of incident. Do you know if NBA teams as a whole are like, or how prevalent it is?
Yeah, it's a funny story. So the answer is yes. I mean, they've assessed, I think, something like 1,200 NBA players over the last decade, which is amazing considering there are only 350 players in the NBA. So a lot of that's happened at the Combine. P3 has like a regular, when the players go get assessed at the Combine, P3 is one of the stops. They also, go to Santa Barbara. Pre-draft, there's a ton of players like William Morris Endeavor clients, which is a big chunk of the best players in every draft, train there for 7 weeks in a row before the draft. They have deals with teams at different times. At different times it's been the Hawks, the Jazz, the Mavericks. I'm sure maybe Orlando. There've been a bunch of teams that have like the Grizzlies for different times. It ends up being, the book kind of goes in detail of like why not. Oh, and now there's a league-wide assessment now. So in the new CBA, every NBA player is assessed 4 times a year with like a full biometric screening that's kind of like this. It's inspired by this. And P3 is like part of the group that's in that world. It's not exactly them, but they're like one of many groups that are part of it. So it's coming. It will become normal for NBA players. It is normal for many. And there's stuff like last time I was there, Jahlil Okafor, who a name you haven't heard in a while, right? But what was he, like the 3rd overall?
Well, I have. He was down here with the Capitani, but yeah.
And then what happened? He tore his Achilles, is what happened. And so then he remembered, he trained at P3 pre-draft, and he loved them. And so that's why we were sharing a little changing area, getting in and out of the cryotherapy chamber with his like bag with the $gazillion watch, And I was like, oh, that's not a regular watch. As I'm slipping into my little, you're supposed to wear basically nothing and then you were like your underwear or something. I'm getting naked, and he's like, oh, is anybody in there? And I'm like, hold on, but that's a little making sure his watch is okay, I think. But he paid his own way to go back to P3 to rehab from his Achilles tear there because they know what they're doing. So yeah, there are a lot of teams that have had lots of involvement, but the limiting factor is that everybody on the team's medical staff wants control. And you can't really do this all in-house because you need the data set of 1,000 NBA players to have any interesting conclusions at all, right? And so there's this little tension of like, does the whole team staff wants to do it? But that the bigwigs believe in it because like so many billionaires, NBA owners have sent their kids to P3. Think about that. They're forking out, and a couple of spouses, etc., or billionaires themselves. The Grizzlies owner up here had trained him, sent himself there, and it's like they believe in it, but they haven't in every case like forked out for the whole team, which to me is like a little crazy. I'm like, okay, great job sending your son. Maybe you should send your star. But anyway.
Yeah, and particularly with so many players out early this season with resting for calf and knee injuries to a degree that seems new. I think Jayson Tatum and Tyrese Haliburton probably have a lot to do with that. We can talk about that more in a moment. But one of the things that really stuck out to me as the podcast resident old person, about the same age as you. I won't say exactly how.
You're 25?
About the same age. Yeah, of course. Exactly. But I've found weirdly that because my job is so much like a professional athlete's, sitting in my chair too much can really affect how my glutes feel. And then my back, almost always, I can feel my back coming to being thrown out from sitting too much, which sounds ridiculous, right? But it's a thing. And it's happened many times in my life that I can smell it from a million miles away now. But you write something about the fact that there are little known muscles in the lower leg and hip area that you can work out to limit those kinds of injuries, which really caught my interest. Could you talk to us a little bit more about that?
Oh, this is like the story of my life. Yeah. I mean, you know who Kelly Starrett is? He's kind of a celebrity physical therapist, CrossFit guru guy. He's big in the pandemic. He made a million YouTube videos of just like basically what you're talking about. Like, how do you deal with the fact that I have to sit at a desk all day and my body feels weird? And one of his books is called Desk Bound, and it has like a guide to like managing your body at the desk. And in there, I've not seen this stat elsewhere, but he says that desk workers have the highest injury rate of any profession, like higher than firefighters, like whatever you would think it would be. Like, this is really hard on our bodies, right? It's not normal. We did not
quit retail for this kind of work.
Yeah.
Thinking I was going to be like much safer in terms of injury.
Yeah. So when you get, so when regular folks, they take 16-year-old, 17-year-old NBA prospects and they assess them at P3 and they already have these problematic movement patterns, as do you and I, if we went there, right? When they assess me, it's a hot mess, right? Like, what is it? Because I've been a writer for my whole adult life. And so it's just kind of systematic flaws of sitting too much, one of which is we are just stupid. I mean, I mean this in like with respect, but like we're not well coordinated in using our lower bodies, right? So like if I throw a ball to you, you can catch it because you've kind of practiced stuff like that your whole life. And there's a certain neural coordination of like the ball is traveling a certain speed and you can just calculate it and you just got that, right? But if you were to step off an 18-inch box, which is part of the assessment, and just land on the ground, like, do your feet take the ground in a good way? Like, odds are not, right? If you grew up walking everywhere and not sitting in a car, then you would be great at that, right? But we're not. We do it, and they talk about like it's like a blind person like just reaching out their hand trying to catch that ball. Like that's how we put our feet at the ground, and so we might still run, but it's not in a way that we're designed to run. So, for instance, when your foot hits the ground, if you do it right, the stress of landing, which is more than enough to like sever your spine, right? It's a huge amount of force, can be nicely distributed up your Achilles and your calf and your quads and your glutes if you move well, which takes some training and the more you sit, probably the more training, right? But if you don't have that, then it might go like if your heel slaps the ground really hard, like if you put your toes down and then your heel slap down, then the heel is the bottom of your tibia, right? The lower leg bone. And instead of that force passing up these nice soft tissues that are strong and designed for it, it goes up the bone. And the next thing at the top of that bone is your knee, which does not want the force of landing, right?
No.
And then similarly, the next joint up, right? When you land, if you want to flex and then take the force into your butt, which like stretches like a rubber band and then shoots you off into the next step. But if it doesn't do that, if you don't flex in your hip, then that force goes into the next thing up, which is your lower back, which is the story of my last year when I was writing the book and I was like debilitated from this exact mechanism of like not flexing my hips enough when I land. So yeah, there's a bunch of kind of common pathologies of us from doing what we're doing right now, which just makes us vulnerable. And, we're all a little different and it's, there's not one magic bullet for how to fix this, but we are designed to move. And it might be that when you start moving again, it feels a little weird, but I think those feelings are, ancient and you can deal with it. Whereas the feelings from sitting all day are newfangled and weird and cause you problems in your body and in every other disease. You're more likely to get cancer. You're more likely to get multiple worse MS symptoms. Everything is like worse. Mental disease, when you sit all day.
It's true. You do talk about something that can be done to address this. I think it's something that is called rotation, deceleration, and relaxation training. Do NBA players use this? And like, can we, as non-elite athletes, use this?
Yeah, there's a lot. So what they found basically there are kinds of athleticism that are important that aren't commonly, and we usually talk about who runs faster, jumps higher, but this like rotation, for example, is the core of baseball. Throwing and hitting is really just how well can you rotate. And I talked about those pitchers who can throw really fast. Like it's a neurological skill set to rotate really efficiently like that. And I think I'm right in saying that no one is in MLB who started playing after the age of 12 because it just takes that many years of rehearsing these rotations to be that smooth at it, that efficient at it, to do what you have to do. So our workouts should include rotation. There's a warm-up in the book, a 13-stage warm-up, which I do every morning. There's a bunch of rotating in there. You're going to just see it. You're like, it's so obvious once you start doing it that you've not been doing it. There's one exercise I do where this is not in the warm-up, but it's in the book. You hold like a 30-pound weight in each hand lying on your back on the floor and just put your legs straight up and then like flop them side to side. And I don't even know. Maybe that's not like an entry level one, right? There's like the warm up has a
no,
more
but I mean,
one, but
my wife has me do something similar with yoga when my back gets super messed up, so it tracks.
So like, and when you do it, you're like, wow, this feels new and different. It's like it shouldn't feel new and different, Like our bodies were definitely. If you were just, we're living 100,000 years ago, like you would move in that way, climbing trees and chasing things and wrestling or whatever. So rotation should definitely be part of what you do, and if you do yoga, right? Some people rotate, but most of us don't. Most of us we run and then we sit and then we.
I mean, I only do it when she reminds me, but
yeah. Rotation reminder. The breaking one. This was like the James Harden revelation where. James Harden was visiting P3. Adidas had paid for him to go there so they could get some kind of like cool biomechanical insight to apply to his first shoe with his name on it. And this guy, Eric, who's really nice, who ran the assessment, had promised the group is big. It's like 20 plus people from the agency, from Adidas, from the team, Harden's friends, his manager, and they're all, James had just led the league in scoring. He was newish in Houston, and he was going to be MVP the next year. Obviously, they didn't know that then, but he's killing it. And they do the assessment, and he's just not like he doesn't. I mean, he said it really nicely, but they're like, he's not going to win a dunk contest. He's not going to be winning the 100-meter dash. He's not. In NBA terms, he's not an elite athlete. And so Eric has promised them he's going to give them the goods of like some preliminary results from his assessment that they can take with them. And there's no great news. But meanwhile, he's like, there's something, he's got to be good at something. Otherwise he wouldn't lead the league in scoring. And so he starts kind of digging in deeper. And then he sees that basically he stops better than almost anybody they've ever assessed. He just stops on a dime. And it's not traditionally celebrated as an athletic thing, but he announces it to the room, and Adidas loves it, and they put some stuff in his shoe that involves like some pattern on the sole to help you break or whatever. And but then they started looking at like, well, is it really a difference maker? And that summer they had a kid. I don't know if he was 16 or 17 that summer, who was visiting with his mom from overseas, who was breaking like James Harden. And they're like, well, if this is a magic skill set, then he's going to turn out to be really good. His name's Luka Doncic. And they started popping up in all these other ways. And basically it's a super skill, an athletic super skill to break really well. And I have a personal theory as to why, which is when James Harden is breaking, one thing that's happening is strong posterior chain, which is what we should be working on. And I'll circle back to your question there. But the other thing is predators in all of nature have like these forward-facing eyes, and they have to really see super clearly. Like the cheetah chasing the gazelle can't get kicked by the gazelle. Has to like see where it's going to leap and land. Same thing with James Harden when he's breaking, has to see the rim. He doesn't just need to shed the defender. He needs to be locked in on the rim, right? And I think that when you see someone with elite breaks, you're not just seeing someone who can stop, but you're seeing someone who can hold their eyes still while they're making these complicated moves. And so like he's better focused on the rim than a more springier, bouncier, faster athlete who might be able to stop as fast, but maybe can't stay as focused on what he needs to focus.
I can see that too, because he, for better or worse, depending on your taste in the style of play that he's known for, he's really good at manipulating space around him, both in terms of drawing fouls and finding people and hitting that 3-pointer. So that makes sense.
No, he's and he looks super calm, right? I do think there's real merit in this. Like he is not a spaz, and as he's in this very spazzy space, but he's just like, no, I know where the rim is, so yeah, that the posterior chain work is complicated. The funny part of it, I guess, is that the real way to improve your breaks, which they can do, they have like big measurable results in training to get people better breaks, better NBA players get better breaks there. The tippity top thing they don't do with NBA players because they don't think they're competent enough weightlifters. But like the top of the mountain is this thing where you put an absurd amount of weight on the bar and then you lower it down. It's more than you can lift again. You lower down and then you ditch the weight. Super super dangerous. It's for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
There are other ways to do it too. There's some people do it with like there's like these kind of legs that you put on the bar. So as you lower it down, then you lower it into the legs. But this is like the thing that they would like to do. Instead, they use this thing called a K-box, which is a flywheel driven resistance machine. So you stand on it and you wear like some kind of harness, and then let's say you stand up and that starts the flywheel going, and then it like pulls you down and you have to like fight it, as you go down. And then because it's a flywheel driven thing, it releases it and then you go back up again instead of being like a weight that crushes you into the ground. But yeah, you'll see those K-box, you'll see those at like swanky gyms. There are ways to train this, but mostly the idea is just include some eccentric movement. Do you guys know what eccentric means? So like most training is shortening your muscle. So like, think about a curl, but eccentric training would be, so like you're just shortening, just like making the muscle shorter. Eccentric training is making it longer. So this would be like opening your arm instead of curling it, but you do that under control and you practice that control. And that's eccentric movement. So same thing with like lowering your weight would be eccentric movement.
Yeah, you mentioned, or what were you going to say?
Just don't let me forget. I have a Nehemias Keta story before we're done.
Ooh. Okay.
Okay. I'll remember that. But you're speaking of stars like Harden and Doncic. I mean, they've been relatively healthy this year, but I feel like we're just seeing every day a new star in the NBA getting injured, and it's a big problem. Adam Silver is trying to address it. People are talking about it on social media all the time. I'm just curious what you kind of think is leading to this uptick in injuries, because I see a lot of opinions online, and I don't know how much merit they have, but I'm curious to see like what you think about that, because it's a pretty big crisis in the NBA.
Yeah, so I think it's one part what I was just talking about with us and our desk jobs, right? Everybody's suffering from not climbing enough trees and jumping in rivers and just having like the neurological advantages of being very competent movers, right? So this has been going. There's incredible like 2-part series from Baxter Holmes a few years ago about the crisis in youth basketball, and they're the youngest person in the world getting an ACL repair just gets younger and younger every year, and it's because of this wicked combination of single sport specialization and then just like playing video games the rest of the time of your day, right? We need general athletic movement. It's a weird experiment on society that we're as sedentary as we are, right? And that's affecting elite athletes too, because they're alive 24 hours a day, not just like the hour and a half they're working out, right? And the rest of the day they're doing the same thing we are. So I think that's a big, huge part of it. And then the other part is, in this P3 data, so they are measuring the best NBA players, explosively jumping and like doing one-off skater where they explode laterally and all this stuff. And they're like, just in the 10, 12 years they've been doing that, they're like, we can tell you the league is vastly faster, right? Way more athletic. I'm pretty sure if you dropped, this is heresy, but if you dropped Michael Jordan at his, peak into, like they do that thing with like the 40-yard dash, the NFL Combine, where you watch like the broadcaster like superimposed with the elite athletes, right? I think that like you'd be blown away how bad the athletes were before if you put them in today's NBA. So I think they become like Formula One race cars where they're dialed in to go maximum speed because you have to keep your job, right? But at maximum speed, they're constantly in the shop, right? Like it's a tough thing to ask. So and the schedule is a factor. It has always been a factor. Marcus Elliott is a smarter person than me. He's a doctor, and he would say if everybody trained properly, maybe they could be fine with the schedule. And I would say, I yield to Marcus on basically all these things. It's his life's work. But I would just say, the way my brain works, like if some people are fine with it, where are they? I know Mikal Bridges has had a good run. There's a few guys, but mostly it seems to take almost everybody. So I feel like probably the schedule is a big factor too.
Yeah, it's tough because I just don't know if the NBA will ever change that, and they're going to all these other methods to affect it. But I guess to just bring it back to the Celtics, since this is a Celtics-centric podcast, the biggest injury that we've all witnessed, and it's honestly affected everything we write about, is from Jayson Tatum when he ruptured his Achilles in May. What do you think about the talk of him returning? Because that's the hottest topic for any Celtics fan, and has been for some time. And some people think it's pretty optimistic. He wants to come back at a home game this season. Other people say there's no way. Like, this has really never been done because it'd be pretty unprecedented from such a serious injury like an Achilles. Just wondering what your thoughts are on how plausible that is, that he returns before the 25-26 season's even over.
I'm going to speak for Marcus here a little bit because I think he has thought about this more than anyone. This return to play is one of the big hot button issues, even before this terrible last year of Tatum and Lillard, etc. So the way we've been doing it is driven by surgeons, and it's based on the calendar. So X weeks after your surgery, you can start running again, and X weeks after that, and in some cases there are little movement benchmarks built in, but it's really just based on the weeks, which is not supported by evidence, right? It's just best guess. And so Marcus would say that we really shouldn't guess. And what we really should do is take Jayson Tatum before and do a full biomechanical workup of this is how he moves when he's healthy. And he can come back when he moves like that, right? When Jayson Tatum moves like Jayson Tatum, he's good to go, right? And because the problem with the existing system is that they routinely see, there's stories in the book of Derrick Rose and Zach LaVine. One of them had a bad outcome, one of them had a good outcome, but they had huge injuries, trained like crazy, got super jacked, jumped 5 inches higher, all this stuff, but actually like skyrocketed their injury risk by not landing well in the ways that I was talking about earlier. And so in the case of Derrick Rose, he returned and immediately he played, I think, 11 games and then had a worse injury in his other knee, which is exactly what is the most common kind of when you really hurt one knee, you're much more likely to land with more force on the other leg because you've been in pain on that knee, right? And then that leg's too stressed. So Zach LaVine, same team, same position, same injury, was about to come back. Also, they said he was jumping 5 inches higher. And Marcus was like, no, please send him back for more training and more assessment. They delayed his return. I think it was like a few months, and he returned at Christmas. And then he went like almost 10 years without getting injured again. So I think, this is the thing, is return to play should be based on you and your movement. And it's totally possible Jayson Tatum is going to be good to go before the end of this year. It's totally possible he isn't. You just want to look at the right signal, right? And the signal is how he's landing. Right. And actually, let's talk for a second. Let's talk about Giannis for a second, which I think is analogous here.
Yeah.
So what do we learn about Giannis, who it looked like maybe tore his Achilles? Turns out strain, our most popular injury in the NBA right now, strained calf. So what do we learn about that? I think that we learned two things. One is there's something about how he lands that isn't great for his lower leg. And we've learned that he's now sore. There's several muscles in the lower leg, right? Let's see if I can name them all. It's like the soleus, the gastrocnemius, which is the calf muscle you can see, the tibialis posterior, and another one. I forget the name. So all of them work to help you break. If you think about these moments when people pop their Achilles, like you're usually they're throwing a leg back behind them while they're explosively moving forward. So big force, and so that foot's coming down behind them at a steep angle, and it's going to stop before you go forward. So that's a braking action. The braking action would ordinarily be spread across all of those tissues I just named and the one that I couldn't remember the name of. And then at the end of all this braking, it would be the Achilles is the braking of last resort, right? It's wrapped around the outside and it has some stretch. If you're sore, if those muscles are sore, it's neurologically very common to avoid deploying those sore muscles, right? So maybe this is theory from spitballing with Marcus and others at P3. Maybe what's happening is you throw your leg back there and you don't get great braking from your super stressed, whatever it is, so soleus, post-tib, gastroc, etc. that ordinarily would deliver you to your Achilles with most of the force taken off your hard step, right? But now maybe you're just arriving at your Achilles with too much breaking left to happen, right? And your Achilles can't take it.
This is by far the best explanations I've heard for any of these things. So I really want to thank you for that.
We got to send a recording of this podcast to Brad Stevens and just, I mean, I'm sure he probably already knows all of this stuff, but no, this is really interesting stuff. And thanks for helping us out with some of this. So just based on, what you kind of have talked through with us so far, the injuries, the kind of explosive movement, how it impacts recovery, return dates, things like that. I guess I'm curious, as a way to kind of wrap things up here. Do you see this, so with the kind of rising trend of these explosive injuries in the NBA, but presumably also, better knowledge of people's bodies and sports science and things like that, do you see over the long run injuries like this increasing as play gets even faster and more explosive, and you see more people coming into the league from these kind of single sport backgrounds, as you mentioned, with maybe some of these kind of wonky biomechanics? Or do you see front offices and training staffs adapting and being able to head more of these off kind of in the future of the NBA?
It's a great question. I think one of the big causes is this, like, childhood is messed up, right? We're not arriving, and that's a societal problem that also affects the anxiety epidemic. Like, they go hand in hand. And so there'll be some kind of decades of getting ahead of that, right? So that will be a giant cause of injury risk for every NBA player, at least from, the Western world, right? For quite some time. So where there are phones, where there are video games, like, kids will grow up with an elevated injury risk when they make it to the NBA. So I don't know. That's a little outside my area of expertise on how long that's going to last. As for the teams, I think the NBA's league-wide project will not yield instant results because they're starting a new data set. They're doing a different assessment that P3 did, and it just takes years to build up enough data to have conclusions. But I think importantly, it's shifting responsibility. Basically, like, if you're the team that has red flags in this data and you keep not addressing them, now we know who the asshole is, right?
Yep.
Like, so far it's been like, I don't know, we had a good trainer, we did what we could, he went to his guy, whatever. It's all been kind of like act of God kind of talk, right? And that's going to change, right? Because there's just going to be more and more data in this area, in this data where you really can predict a lot of the worst injuries, and it's going to shift who's supposed to be addressing it, and that's going to be helpful.
Sounds like we might see a lot less dunks in the NBA in the distant future too.
That's a crying shame.
Tell us about
none of them, but I know, but
tell us about Nemesh Keita. You said you had a story.
Yeah. Okay. So there are, depending on time of year, but there are times of year where there's tons of NBA players coming and going from P3, and it's really one big room, and there's loud music, and people are working out really hard, but there's also a lot of camaraderie and yelling, and it's a fun. There's a lot of love in that place, and so I don't know, if let's say now, like, if Jabari Walker was there, Jabari walks in, nice guy, he goes around, gives everybody a little dap, he might say, hi, I'm Jabari, great. But when Keita arrives, like, this was, I think the first time I saw this was 2022. So he was really like a deep bench player, I want to say, for the Kings at that time. And everybody stops. They love him. It's like, he's just the greatest guy. And they're like, it's hugs, and like the whole staff is up. And I was kind of like, oh, like, what's the deal? It's like the king has arrived, And I was like, what's the deal? They're like, oh, like, it's just, like, he's the first Portuguese player in the NBA. And I'm like, that doesn't seem like a reason to stop the workout, like, but I just loved it. I was like, he just seemed like a very, very special guy, like, personally, and they're rooting for him so hard over there. And so now to see him, like, he's a total monster now, right? He's just killing it. And I was like, this is so, it's very heartwarming for me to see this, because it seems like he's been working hard at this for a long time, and everybody loves him.
We certainly love Nemesh Keita over in Boston Celtics world. He's been playing outstanding basketball, and we're very happy that he's doing.
And he's huge.
Statistical darling. Absolutely.
I think he's 7. He's 7 flat, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
But and like strong, and he can move. Like
presence is large. He's been probably the biggest success story of this Celtics season in a lot of ways.
I saw some crazy like on-off numbers where basically like with him in the game, the Celtics are great, and with him out of the game, they're terrible. That's paraphrasing, but roughly.
Particularly the thing that jumps out is when he is in the game, they own the rebounds and the glass, and when he's out of the game, they get killed on the rebounds. It's pretty crazy to watch. Well, Henry, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure walking through your book. The title is Ballistic, The New Science of Injury-Free Athletic Performance by Henry Abbott, produced by W.W. Norton and Company. Henry, where can we find some of your other work?
Well, TrueHoop has been my home for, 1,000 years or so. That's TrueHoop. That's on Substack. And henryabbott.com is my author website where I'm putting every time, like you guys will be on there when this podcast, I try to put everything on there to do with the book. Cool. And my name is 2 B's, 2 T's. People are not generous with that last T. They don't want to give it up, but that's where you'll find it.
Very strange. Daniel, where can we find your work?
Yeah, you can find it right here. You're listening to it, or on Celtics Wire and Clutch Points. Also, just Google my name and writing will come up.
Justin, where can we find
You already found
your
it.
work? Oh, okay. Well, thank you so much. You can find my work on this podcast. And also, if you like music, you can find my band Divine Sweater on Spotify and Apple Music. And
they're really good. Don't let them downplay it.
Okay.
So we'll wrap things up as we always do on Havlicek Stole the Pod with something to remember or something to forget. Henry, how it works is you can pick something to remember, something to forget. It can be from this week. It can be from today. It can be from the last 45 minutes. It can be from, any point in your life up until now. And then on top of that, you can also pick whether that thing is about basketball, the Celtics, injuries, Nemesh Keita, what you had for breakfast this morning. Once again, you get to take this whatever direction you want. To model, we'll give you the last word. Dr. Quinn, you're going to go first. Something to remember or something to forget.
I thought of something I need to remember that's actually very appropriate for this one, and maybe in the future as well. We'll see how that goes. There's a possibility it'll be particularly relevant again, but once upon a time I was talking to Robert Parrish, and he told me how important it is to make sure you keep your hips nice and fluid and engaged if you want your back to work. And I really need to take that advice a little bit more seriously, because literally today I felt that creeping, I'm going to throw myself out feeling, and it's because I've been sitting so much. So, yeah.
Daniel, do you have something to remember or forget?
Yeah, I'm going to remember that the Celtics are 6-3. Against the Knicks, Magic, and Cavs. And Pistons. That was the other team. So, if anything, they've proved that they can hang with some of the top teams in the East. Can they always close them out? Not 100% of the time, but the fact that they're even hanging in there right now is a good sign. And hey, maybe down the line, like we were talking about, Tatum comes back and changes everything for this team, but still a lot up in the air, but good sign so far.
Hopefully
I need to remember that I have a Theragun that I don't use nearly enough, and my shoulder is a little sore from lifting the other day, and I probably should use it shortly. Henry, last word. What do you got?
So I got 2 things. Number one is I just wrote down Divine Sweater because I want to listen to your music.
Great.
The other thing to remember is, look, I've spent years writing this book, and the message is that your body's designed to move, and it's safe to move, and you should be doing fun stuff. And we spent a ton of time. Almost all the interviews for the book were outside, like moving, biking, hiking, almost never sitting down. And so then that was in Santa Barbara where this happens. But then I come home where I live in New Jersey. I was like, I got to do more fun stuff like that, and ended up with like a text group with a bunch of crazy friends, and we routinely we hike in, like it's about a half an hour hike in, and you jump off a waterfall and like land. And I'm telling you, everybody walking in is like a little nervous and I'm not sure we're going to do it. And then on the hike back out, everybody, it's like we're on drugs. We're not, but like everybody's just like so happy. like just joyous. People are telling their life story. They're laughing. They're telling whatever. Like, it's just a great transformation. And I was like, I don't understand exactly how all this machine works, but it likes not just movement, but like fun stuff. Like, really get out there. Your body's designed to do that kind of stuff, and it feels great. And so this is what I'm trying to remember is, like going, whatever you like to do. I'm going to go skiing soon. I grew up skiing. To me, like, this kind of stuff is not a small thing. It's not just a little bit. It's like, no, this is like, you got to move and make it really fun to move so that your body wants to keep doing it. Otherwise you lose it.
Beautiful. Great way to close out. Thanks, Henry, for coming on yet another episode of Havlicek Stole the Pod. Dear listener, we will talk to you soon.
But Havlicek steals it over the side zone. Havlicek stole the ball.